Today we've got a really neat project going on. We have to figure out what's going on with the timing parts on this 1986 Nissan Z24 2.4 liter motor. So what happened was I did a head gasket job on this motor a while back and it just conked out, no pounds of compression. That was in the two-wheel drive truck. Got a new motor in that obviously right now, and so now I'm just spiffing up this one. Now let me show you what's going on here. It's kind of funky. We're gonna put a short breaker bar on the front of the motor here. We're gonna turn it. Now watch. See, the big cam gear there is turning, but the cam is definitely not turning. No valves opening and closing. Not turning. So I'm thinking what happened is with the front here, there's a little pin on this right here, and the cam gear sets down on that and latches into that pin. So I'm thinking what happened is the cam gear came forwards, jumped off the pin, and now is spinning free from the valve train, which is super bad. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna flip the motor, we're gonna drop the oil pan, then we're gonna flip the motor over, check for everything. The reason we're going to have the motor right side up when we take the oil pan off is frequently when timing parts go wrong, they will just drop off and end up in the oil pan. Now if we flip the motor over and we drop the oil pan off, those wonderful timing parts are going to wind up in our bottom end, and we don't want that, so we're going to make sure and leave the motor right side up when we pop the oil pan off. Now, to get going, you're definitely going to want oil pan gasket, because you cannot reuse that. That's impossible. And timing kit for your vehicle. Should be able to get that at the parts store. We have a chain, tensioner, sprockets, and the rails. Those rails sometimes drop off. That really messes stuff up. See these? You can find those in oil pans sometimes. That goes at the bottom, I think. Other guide, chain, and a new cam gear. So let's get right on it and drop that oil pan, which is not fun to do upside down. It's way better if the motor's out of the vehicle. Now I'm lucky I have a garage and I get to just, if my motors go bad, I can just pull them and then fix them when it's convenient. And right now it's definitely a convenient time to fix them because I have time. Don't always have time. Just gonna need your hand tools and probably other stuff. But I don't know what that other stuff is yet. Probably find out right when we really get going here. These oil pan bolts here are really difficult to get at when the motor's in the rig. Like, extremely difficult. We're gonna want a magnetic parts bin These things are super useful. Oh, excuse me. I usually get them at Harbor Freight because they're super cheap there, and you don't really need high quality ones. You know, if you're getting a snap-on magnetic parts dish, that's a little crazy. Now if you can get a snap-on, you know, the high-grade socket drivers and whatnot, that's totally worth it. Especially if you use them regularly. On these front ones, I like to use a short extension because then you can get most of the way around, especially if you're using the kind of ratchet with the head that comes and spins around. Somehow I always end up working on really dirty motors. Maybe it's because I have really dirty motors. But before this goes back in, it's gonna get a good cleaning, but it's a little bit chilly out to get the pressure washer out. You know, below freezing pressure washing is not my favorite pastime. I don't know about you. When you're doing this, you're going to want to make sure, and if you are lucky enough to have it on a stand, would definitely not put your head underneath, because I don't really trust it. There's no reason that you shouldn't trust your engine stand, but it would be bad to have your engine fall on your head. No. It's not really an insurance claim anybody wants to make. You know, you call me, you're like, what happened? Well, you see, this engine fell on my head and it was a bad deal. Of course, you'd be lucky to survive that. Now, if the engine fell on your arm, that'd be interesting. Just make sure you tell people that you got in a fight with a shark. Sounds a lot better than an engine fell on my arm. Then again, having an engine fall on your arm, it's not a terrible story. Could be worse. You could have fallen out of your tree fort. Or just got your arm stuck in a tree. You should check and make sure there's no oil in this motor. I got the oil pan off. It only took a little over an hour. So after you take all the bolts out, they're always really stuck. Because this old gasket, it turns into glue. Which is probably why they don't have oil leaks, generally speaking. But I didn't think you guys needed to see all of that, because it's probably painful to watch. So you want to make sure and set aside lots of time for removing your oil pan, because it takes forever. It does seem though that the lower mileage engines, the oil pans are easier to get off. Now, let's see if we can take this off. I wonder if I can just take that off. What's the worst thing that can happen? Don't answer that. Definitely. Don't answer that. Ooh. I don't know what that is. Seems like a really big screw should go in there. Let's try taking this off. Ouch. Everything has to be so stuck. I hope this doesn't open up and explode like an old watch. You know, sometimes you just have to smack it. In addition to your timing kit, you're also going to need a timing cover gasket. I have taken off the oil pump and the timing cover. We ended up using an impact to get the big bolt on the front here that hangs out underneath the harmonic balancer and front pulley because we couldn't get it off. It was very tight. You can generally put a long extension inside this hole on the big cam gear, and that will hold it so you can turn it, but my cam gear had come forward, so that wasn't working. So in my case, the top end was not in time with the bottom end because the cam gear had come forward and jumped off the peg on the back of the cam. I put it back on and everything was in time, but now I'm going to replace this stuff. So we're just going to take that off. Went on like that, so we're gonna set it down like that. Now this is keyed, so you'll want to make sure that you have that lined up properly. See, there's a little hole right there and a slider. It should just come over. That way too tight. Now we're gonna take the guides off. If you're doing your timing chain, I hope that your bottom end and top end haven't come out of alignment. But if they have, you can see here they're on the old timing chain. The new timing chain that I got is completely unmarked, which ended up being quite a pain. But you can see there's this special colored link right here and right here on the old one. If you have an unmarked timing chain, which I hope you don't, but you might end up with an unmarked one, you're gonna want to just take a pen, a paint pen if you have one, and just mark those links on the timing chain. And when you do that, you want to make sure that you lay it out exactly the same, and that you just set them next to each other and mark the same link on the same side. Then you want to put the timing chain on the cam sprocket up here first. Then you're gonna put it, and you're gonna just kind of dangle it down here in front of the other sprocket here, and see if it looks right. And you can see I marked, and you can't see, but I marked one of the links there. And the first time I did it, it was over here. So what I ended up having to do was the bottom end here was 180 out. So for every time that the camshaft turns once, this turns twice. So the bottom end was 180 out. So I turned it, and then it magically lined up with the colored link. So now what we're going to do is we're going to put the bolt back in here. We're going to put that funny thing on, and then we're going to put the tensioner and the guides on. We're not going to put the timing cover back on. Then we're going to turn it over a couple of times and make sure that the valves open and close at the proper intervals. And if your valves open and close at the proper intervals, then you pretty much know you've done it correctly. Outside of actually starting it up, that's as best as you can know. So here we have this 22mm bolt. We're just gonna check, make sure you've got the cam guide in the second hole on the cam sprocket. The special colored link is lining up. We're gonna put the bolt back in. Now, because this is a non-interference engine, you don't have to worry about smashing the valves into the pistons when you turn the bottom end separate from the top end. If it was an interference motor like most other production motors out there today, then you would have to be extremely concerned about that, because you really don't want to crunch your valves against your pistons there. And then you have to replace at least the valves. Whoops. Here we go. Now we're gonna have to double check. Can't see. I can't see the little hole. Where'd the little hole go? There, you can see the special colored link is still lined up with the dot on the crank sprocket. Special colored link is still lined up here. So what that means is we are safe to reinstall the guides and the new tensioner. Just don't want to lose that. Now you can see, I don't recall which direction the guides go in. That doesn't matter, because on the old block here you can see an outline of where the guide was. end. For real, this? Oh, okay, we're good, we're good. For a second there, it looked like the holes didn't line up. Just want to show you guys something here. So, when you look at the old guide and the new guide, it's not so obvious on the straight side, obviously, but you can see there's definitely some wear pattern in there. It's significantly more obvious on the curve side, which I'll show you in a moment here. These are a 10 mil. They don't like to start especially easily, which I imagine could be quite difficult if the motor was still in the vehicle. There we go, we can see it's nice, tight. Now if you have lots of slack on this side here, and no slack, or less slack on this side, you've messed up. Now we're going to this guide. So you can see it has this big hole here. It can float about a little bit. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna anchor the bottom screw, and then we're gonna do the top one. Now, when you look at the new guide versus the old guide, I don't know how clear it is on camera, but there is some pretty good wear in there. It had plenty of. It could have gone quite a ways further, but we're gonna replace it anyhow. It always feels good to have new timing parts in your motor. If you're going to attempt this in the car, or in the truck, you definitely want to pull out your radiator. Just doing this with the radiator in, not gonna happen. See, there's a little hole there where the oil fills the tensioner right there. Totally do not want to mess with that. There's a new rubber washer right there. So we want to make sure that hole gets lined up properly. This new spring is quite a bit stiffer than the old one. Oil galley back there. I think the factory spec on this is like 6 or 7 foot-pounds. So we're not gonna go real crazy tight here. Just tight enough. You really don't want it to fall out because that would be really, really bad. Okay. So the service manual allots a clearance of 0.00 millimeters on this. So when you put this back together, you want the tensioner to be all the way in. And the only way you're gonna get that is this guide right here. So what you do is you push the guide all the way that way, as far as you can, and then you tighten it up. That gives the tensioner a full, this much room to expand as the chain stretches over time, which they will do, which is the main reason I'm replacing this chain. It probably would have gone a little further, but the chain was fully, the tensioner was fully extended, which is not cool at all. So we're gonna tighten the screw bolt down here right up to where it starts to put some tension on the guide. Then once we get there, we're just gonna push the guide over. Ooh, that's bad. That is really, really bad. That's really, really bad. I just broke that bolt off. Just getting back from the bolt store here, had to pick up a couple of new bolts and some other goodies to get this stuck bolt out. So there's a couple of ways you can do that. You can just plain drill it out, which you got to be careful because you don't want to hit the block because you'll mess that up. And then you can just run a tap in it, or you can use a fancy extractor and then you can clean the threads out with a tap. So I have a fancy tap and extractor here from the screw store, so we're gonna give that a whirl. I think first we're gonna check and make sure that these new bolts fit in the bolt holes. Look at that. Gotta love the screw store. Okay, so hopefully you can see clearly. Nah, not too well, but there's the stuck bolts right there. So we've got this fancy extractor right here. We're gonna open that up. Now, the way these work, you just reverse the drill, and as they go into the bolt, once they have enough threads in there, they grab the bolt and back it out. So we're gonna need the drill. Got the drill here. So we're gonna take a very small bit here and we're just going to start. That's not gonna work. Drilling into it a little bit, but the tensioner is really in our way here. So we have to take it back out. Mildly annoying. We're going to just take a zip tie, zip it through, tighten it up a little bit. Okay, that's good to go. Drill. Now we're gonna go in. Seems dumb, but that'll make sense. You might want a pair of glasses, you know, safety third. A little bit of oil here could act as a cutting oil to help us out a little bit. Don't get it on your drill though. Not too much though, or you won't be able to see. It's gonna want to wander a little bit. You want to get the hole right in the middle, because you really don't want to hit the block. Let's try and extract it now. So we'll just put the extractor. You know what? Let's see if we can do it without that. See if it'll even want to go here at all. We might not have enough of a hole. Yeah, we need more of a hole. I think we've taken more material out of this screw extractor than out of this bolt extractor than out of the bolt. It's not the way it's supposed to work, folks. I had to go to the hardware store and get a new screw extractor. This one came with a much higher quality bit, which I just used to make an enlarged pilot hole, and a new screw extractor, which I'm going to try to use now. Hey, this one actually appears to be biting. A little bit of turn here. The screw extractor actually bent a little bit there. Woo! It is out. Finally. Doesn't look like we damaged anything, so that's good. Now, at the screw store, I bought oopsies. Set that right there. Bought a little tap here. So we're gonna use that just to clean out the threads a little bit. Let's definitely hope this works better than the screw extractor from the screw store. There's a little bit of tension in there, but not too bad. Okay, felt it bottom out there. Once you feel it bottom out, you'll just want to come back out. If you can't turn it with your fingers... Ooh. Yeah. After you do all that drilling, you're definitely going to want to do this, as there was a fair amount of metal shavings in the back there. Don't really know how those got there, but they found their way in there somehow. Ah, it's magnetic. That's brilliant. Magnetic screw extractor. Not magnetic tap. That's hard to beat. You can see now that it's going in and out quite easily. Now let's clean out the rest of them. Don't really want to exert much force on that, but I really don't think it's bottomed out yet. So we're going to take the crescent wrench and just not put any leverage on it. Because we don't want to put extra leverage on there, because we could potentially damage something. But if there's no leverage on there, then damaging something would be pretty difficult, unless you're Bruce Banner when he's angry. Now we can begin again to disassemble this mess. I mean, reassemble this mess. We're gonna put the timing guides back on, put the tensioner back on, then we're gonna check and make sure that our valves and everything are opening and closing properly. But before we begin that, we want to get these metal shavings off the chain here. Metal shavings, not cool. We need some canned air. Water might work too. Let's try some water here. That worked. And because everything's covered in oil, the water just ran right off. Okay. Now we're going to want to check, after we've been messing with everything, check and make sure that our specially colored chain links that we colored ourselves are still in the proper spot. And they are, so now we're going to put these guards back on. Because I had to get some new screws. I have the screws here now. I don't know if I want the long one or the short one, because they got all mixed up. And I really don't want to break one off again. Really don't want to break one off. Yeah, I think that's a short one. Let's try it up here. You don't have to get new screws unless you break yours off. Or these are actually bolts, but... let's use 1/4" drive socket. Because I really don't want to break one of these off again. Huh. That's a short one too. Oh well, we can make this work. I bought extras. Let's go for the short ones. Couple of washers. Which ones had the lock washers? Short ones had the lock washers. With the lock washer then. Got lock washer here. Ooh. There it is. Left it in the bag. Starting to freak out there. Make sure you use the new guides. Kinda seems obvious, but it wouldn't be too difficult to accidentally put the old guide back on. Now, I'm tempted to be all timid with these and not tighten them down far enough, but I know that wouldn't be good. Now, I gotta figure out if these are long ones or short ones. Ah, that's a short one. And where does the long one go? Must go in the bottom left there. It's weird, I thought for sure the long one went in there. Oh well. I bought extra so we can make it work. You can see the big one with the giant washer has to go at the top. Nice, clean, no scratch marks on that. Gotta cut the zip tie off. Should have a cutter on here. Maybe not. You can cut that. Okay. My zip tie cutter is missing in action today, I guess. Well, that'll work. This better fit in there. Wow, that screwed in nicely. That went really nicely. Even if you don't mess it up and break things. Here, look at this. Look at this old tensioner here. Wowee. That had a rough life. Here, look at this compared to the new one. Significantly smaller and just torn up. Where'd that screw go? That tensioner was totally shot. Ooh, this will be fun. Make sure you line up that oil hole. Pretty hard to get wrong, but still, sure, somebody like me out there could manage it. This is where it gets tricky, because you have to hold the tensioner in and get the screw on there. Heater's running out of gas. It's been about 28 degrees outside, so it's really nice to have a bit of heat in the garage. Where did that socket driver go? Next is the fun part. We have to scrape off the old gasket. Definitely not the fun part. So, now we're doing this second time, obviously, but we have to push the tensioner back, pull the guide forwards, and then tighten it up. Without breaking the bolt. There we go. That is beautiful. Look at that. Wow. Oh, I don't know if we can get that any tighter. Loosen that up a little bit so we can pull it a little bit more. There we go. Man, look at that. That is awesome right there. That's beautiful. Brand new tight timing chain. Oh man, that is awesome right there. You want to make sure you get these snug down good, because if they fall out, it's not healthy for the motor. There we go. Man, that looks really good. Okay, so we want to snug this bolt down good and tight, because when it doesn't get snugged down tight enough, then it falls out. And you can guess what happens when that falls out. It's really, 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 really bad. And we gotta find that 22 mil socket so that we can Nope. Never mind. We want the 20, the 19 one's right there. Okay. So we've got our little socket extension in here. Tightening. There we go. Sucked it tight. How tight are we going right now? We want to go to about 115 foot-pounds. That one. That way. There's 110. There's 115. The factory spec is between 116, is between 87 and 116. I've had these fall out before, so I'm gonna do whatever it takes to keep that from falling out. Now, it's really stuck. We have to loosen it up. There we go. Now, what's next? Pull this back out. Before we slide that cog on there, whatever you want to call it, let's find that breaker bar. There it is. Big old 27 mil on it. Now make sure and turn this tight or you'll end up loosening it. Absolutely do not want to do that. Okay. Everything seems to be turning okay. It's a sign we didn't mess up horribly. Now, what we want to make sure is that... wow, look at that. Okay, so the next valve to open is going to be the exhaust valve, which means it should be... There we go, I felt a little whoosh coming out. That's good, very, very good. Now we should be going back down. Yep, sucking in new fuel, and the piston's down. Very, very good. Now, coming around. Coming around, coming up. All valves are closed. We're at the top. Boom! Explodes. Fire, cool stuff happens inside. We're going down. Exhaust valve is opening. Coming up again. Expelling exhaust gas. Woohoo! Got the screwdriver stuck. Should never do that. There we go. Perfect. So what that means is everything goes around, everything opens at the right time, everything is good and proper. That means that we timed it properly. Which means we got the marks in the right spot, we got the stuck bolt out. All we have to do is put it back together and cross our fingers a lot. Now that the difficult part's done, we just have to put the timing cover back on. So we probably want a razor blade to scrape off the old gasket. This is definitely not the fun part. It's better than cleaning oil pans. That's a chore. If you have a kid, maybe get a little volunteer assistance on this. Little cousins can work too. Younger siblings are perfect if you can get them. Now we're gonna put this thing on. It's pretty easy to tell which side goes in. The scratched side goes in. Couple of love taps from a rubber mallet. See, I took a combination wrench here, a standard size one, because I don't usually use those for anything else, and just pushed it on the front of the little cog here, tapped it on. Now we have this thing. It's keyed. Got all the old gasket cleaned off here. As you can see, I've set the new gaskets out so you can see them. And we cleaned off the old gasket on this timing cover. Put in a new front oil seal, which came in the gasket kit. Now, these gaskets are going to be difficult to put on because of the way things jiggle around when you try and put them on. So we're gonna put some gasket goop on there, so just to hold them steady. This stuff dries really quick. You don't want to just hang out for a long amount of time. You also don't want to leave the lid off, but Then I put a Loctite on all of these so that they don't get loose on me, because that would be terrible. If you did not take the oil pan off, you'll want to, the oil pan will just be hanging out right here, and you'll want to cut a new piece of gasket and stick it to the front with some RTV. So I recommend just taking the gasket off completely and putting a new one on, because otherwise it might leak like a Chevy. Okay, you can see when you look around, the gasket is still where it goes. So that means we can put in all of these wonderfully huge bolts. I've got the water pump back on here. As you can see, that wasn't very difficult, so I thought you guys wouldn't mind missing that. Now we're putting the oil pump back on, which also isn't difficult, but you want to get it right. I just turned the stand sideways, which makes everything super easy. So I like to, just to make sure I don't get it backwards, take it, I put it in, you can feel it turning, you can even hear it turning, then you just slide it in, pushes into the little gear there. Yeah. Then you don't forget the new gasket. This should also be included in your gasket kit. Make sure it matches the old one. It's the little valleys and stuff. Okay. Slides on nicely. Give me a second. Something's not right. Doesn't feel right. I'm gonna try and take it back out. This thing really likes it if you go in a just a crisscross pattern, because it's so small that things get really tight if you don't. And it passes the visual inspection. That fancy blue gasket hanging out right there. Now, nice and messy. Seems like everything is messy. Okay. I'll hit that with a breaker bar and a torque wrench later. Yuck. Everything looks okay in there. Now we're just gonna put the valve cover on, oil pan gasket back on, and the oil pan. Tighten this up to 140 foot-pounds. The oil pan bolts are 7 foot-pounds. You want to put your distributor back in, but I don't have one on this motor. I have a couple motors and only one distributor. Then, if you're doing a head gasket at the same time, you're going to want to retorque those head bolts frequently. I have a video on doing that. When you torque this bolt up front, you'll just put the extension back in. Should be good. I did not replace the water pump at the same time because I think the factory water pumps are better and I want to use it as long as I can. It's not impossible to do that in the vehicle either. I also need to find that bolt or buy a new one, so I will do that. There will be a gasket for your hose thing. Yeah. Should have a gasket for that in there too. And that's about it. Yeah. You should be able to wrap it up from here. Thanks for watching. I hope this video helped you. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to leave a like behind or smash that subscribe button. If there's something specific you want to see in an upcoming video, feel free to leave that in the comments and I'll see what I can do to help you out. And as always, tell your friends. Thanks for watching.